Hello, one and all, and welcome back, yes, back to the Great Unknown Audio Show with me, your illustrious host and most appropriate face for radio, Maxim Jennings, as we continue to venture north on this epic Western Australian road trip extravaganza. And it's been about 24 hours since I last updated you on what I've been doing, what kind of crazy stuff I've been getting up to. And we had a very early start this morning as a seaplane is currently above me. I don't think you'll be able to hear that one, as my ears, I have the hearing of a hawk, or as my grandma would say, the hearing of a fox. It is that way, isn't it? Eyes of a hawk and the hearing of a fox. Yeah, I got it wrong. No, she'd say it the other way around. But anyway, we started the day pretty early in Maxim Jennings standards as we made our way to Humankind, which is just northeast of where I was staying in Denham on Shark Bay. Humankind to go to the Dolphin Discovery Centre, which their first activity started at 8 o'clock in the morning, so we had to be up, ripe and ready to go and make our way down about 30 kilometres away from where I was staying, so up earlier than usual. No test for me, as to, like I'd said in the last episode, the sun really dictates the time period of sleep that one is getting whilst in a tent. Sorry folks, I'm just going to have to stop for a second as I've got my man bag around my waist and it is slowly but surely riding down my backside and is going to fall. I'm currently crossing a bridge in my flip-flops, so there's not too much grip in the air. So I'm going to have to take a pause quickly and I'll be right back with you. Right, apologies for that little inconvenience. You might have seen that my backside is starting to shrink, or maybe my waist is. I don't think the latter is going to be very plausible, should I say. But yeah, so we got down to the Dolphin Discovery Centre just in time to watch the most ethical of animal, marine life, wildlife feeding I've ever seen, as there was a big crowd in attendance to see what they thought would be a bunch of over-excessive feeding towards a group of dolphins that had been staying at the Discovery Centre, but that's not to be. So Shark Bay is really a very interesting place. It's obviously got lots of different species of sharks, which I mentioned on the last episode, but also it's home to various families of dolphins who like to do a lot of kind of high tide eating and catching of fish, and Shark Bay seems to be a very good place for them to do so. I think the heat really helps for them. Dolphins aren't nocturnal or the same as humans in terms of that they're only alive at night. They kind of periodically take their sleeps depending on how much food they've caught. So every morning this Discovery Centre comes out and feeds the dolphins 3 times in the morning, but they can identify each dolphin and has a name for each one, so that they only get a maximum allowance of 900 grams of fish, which is obviously what dolphins eat. So, which is quite good for the dolphins, because if they have newborns who haven't learnt the art of catching fish, especially at night time when it's a bit more difficult, they have a supply of that to keep them going, because dolphins need, as I was watching on a documentary at the Discovery Centre, about 30 fish the size of the ones that they were being given today every day to survive and live healthily. And so there's a lot of responsibility on the mothers when they have a calf or whatever a baby dolphin's called to hunt but also protect at the same time. So this kind of takes a bit of stress away from them, which is always good. Yeah, so, and what do I mean by in terms of ethical? Well, as soon as there wasn't that much fish in the buckets to start with, they only had They had 2 volunteers come out after the crowds had gathered on the beach. The crowds were then told to step out of the water and not disturb any of the dolphins. I was on the little boardwalk area because, you know, ethics is part of my repertoire, being a journalist and all. But yeah, so the feeding lasted for about 10 minutes. So you know that's ethical because it's realistic. Like, you're not going to overfeed dolphins for an hour just to please tourists. And everyone had their phones out. We saw some mega lenses, and it wasn't like they were chucking the fish up in the air to get the dolphins to do any tricks or something like that you'd see at other aquariums or various other establishments that are known for these kind of endeavours. It was very much just as a dolphin would catch the fish, it was done just for people to see. I mean, they're pretty visible animals anyway because their fin is constantly out of the water, and they need to poke their blowholes out. Not blow, that's a whale. They need to poke their noses out so they can get some air anyway. So it was plenty to see, and it was nice to see them come to the shore, which is what they were doing, which is what they do anyway. So that was a really good start to the day. And then we had to depart from Shark Bay. We left at around 10:30, but had an absolute nightmare, really. And my first real challenge, camping-wise, as the tent, I was going on so assuredly, is that a word? So positively about the storm, which you could probably pick up on the mics in the day before, about how I hadn't seen rain for such a long time. But stupidly, and this is a classic move of mine, to not take all precautions and to really rush into things without double checking, making double checks. And that's a form of organisation, double checking. I don't have it in the locker. It's infuriating because it has repercussions. Anyway, what happened was that I'd zipped up the tent, but I hadn't zipped up the almost fly net resistant bit that gives you a bit of air if it gets too hot, but you don't want to get out of bed yet. So that meant that water had been seeping through that, albeit relatively small, but I was gone for a good 3 hours or so. And so it picked up, and then I was trying to use a dustpan and brush at dinner time to scoop the water out, but there were still some remains of that, and all the turf around me, because I was on this shocking dirt. Thankfully, we're not on that anymore, but it really does mean that every time you walk around, like, it's like sandy dirt, and it just gets absolutely everywhere, and it's an absolute bugger to get rid of. So I was kind of annoyed, but part of me was like, right, we knew that something like this was going to happen. We've just got to learn from it and try not to do it again, because we're all about making as many mistakes as possible, but trying to get better from it, because life is going to be full of mistakes. That's one guarantee. So especially if you're doing something outdoors, which is what I was kind of going through in my head. I was like, maybe some people like being outdoors and doing outdoor activities and trying new things all the time because they kind of like the challenge of, and knowing that they're going to be able to make mistakes and testing themselves on how they react to it. So I was trying to take that positive frame of mind as I'm actually baking now in the sun. Haven't put any sun cream on, so my next challenge, I presume, will be trying to not get burnt like a prawn, but this seems likely at this point as I'm talking to you. Anyway, so that meant that the tent was pretty wet throughout the night. Some of my stuff, such as the sleeping bag, the blow-up mattress, shall we call it, and the liner, were a bit soggy, and sleeping that night was a bit difficult. But we got there in the end, had about 5-6 hours before getting up for the dolphin thing anyway. So we got there, we learned from it, but we'll try not to repeat that again. And then we left the caravan park. Thankfully the sun was out in the morning, and it dried the tents up pretty quickly, but some of my other stuff just needed a bit of time to dry. So I left at about 11, got my coffee, and then made my way. I knew that there was something that I wanted to see on my next travel north. that I'd seen on the way in, and then heard a few things about that Shark Bay was kind of notorious for. And I kept driving for a good 70 kilometres or so, hadn't seen it yet. And then it said, oh, you're leaving the World Heritage Centre of Shark Bay. And I'm like, okay, have I bloody gone past it? And I'd be bloody annoyed if I've gone past it. But I didn't. It was there. So they're called the stromatolites. And they are at Hamlin Pool. And really, they are one of the most impressive pieces of nature of all time, thanks to their longevity and their evolution, really, in many ways. But upon the eye, they are not the most mind-boggling or awe-inspiring. So you really have to do your research onto it. So I was there, and I was like, oh, God, they've made a way about this. And then when I started reading, my kind of scientific brain and light bulbs started to turn on a bit, and it was getting quite impressive. So these stromatolites are kind of big mats, that big natural mats, so to speak, that are built up of slime and a heap load of bacteria and other things that have been around for over 75% of the Earth's living time. So over 3.5 billion years. They are some of the oldest organisms still alive on our planet, which I found mind-boggling, first of all. And they also were almost the starters of all life form and evolution on our planet, because they managed to gather bacteria and form bacteria in these mats that were the first pieces of bacteria to breathe, and a combination of the bacteria and some of the other stuff that was in the mats formed oxygen and gave off oxygen in their chemical reactions when they came together and combined. So I found that absolutely fascinating, that what I was seeing, although not that impressive, is incredibly crucial to human life form, any form of life form that happens on our planet. It was mesmerising. And so that was all in Hamlin Pool, which I would have to say wasn't the best of tourist attractions from a marketing and whatever business standpoint, but absolutely fantastic. And I really liked the way it was. It had been hit by a cyclone in 2021, so there was no real viewing podium or boardwalk to see the actual stromatolites that are kind of like big lampposts of rock and mats that come out of the water in low tide. But fascinating nonetheless, and Hamlin Pool has been home to the indigenous people for over 30,000 years. I just find that crazy as well. 30,000 years the indigenous people have been residing in this area of Australia. So much longer than any other people that we now describe, and I really find their culture fascinating, and how they've been able to survive for this long is incredibly impressive. It really is. So yeah, that's really kind of summed up my day. I'm now in Carnarvon, which is sounds pretty Welsh, doesn't it? Carnarvon. It's in between where I was and Exmouth. They call it Exmouth. I hope they don't. I think it's Exmouth, but that's a place in England as well. So lots of names that are named after English places that are probably pronounced in the little Australian twang. But yeah, Carnarvon, it was the biggest town I've been in for a while. They had a Woolworths, absolutely fantastic, as my supplies were running low, so we had to restock. My caravan park is really nice, and I'm really happy that I've gone from one in Shark Bay that was underwhelming to this one, which is really nice. And my spot is on grass. I love grass, and it's warm here, which is good, but it's not too warm. It's about 26 now. I just picked up my cup of coffee, getting ready to start the day, more planning preparations, and there's a lovely lounging area, so I can kind of be lazy a bit and have a day to myself to keep planning for New Zealand, keep planning the rest of the trip, get some things sorted, and maybe watch a film that I haven't got downloaded with the Wi-Fi that works. So thank you very much for listening, folks. It's been a bit of a history and science show today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and goodbye.